All right, let's bring back the lawyers, Misty Marris and Florida prosecutor Dave Berg. I'm sorry. It was more interesting than I expected it to be. So you guys were going on with your night. I lied. You had to come back. Sorry. Now, Dave Berg, you had questions, and yes, that is the famous Dr. Drew Pinsky. I'm just not going to talk to him about the law. I'm more interested in the big angle. But Dave, style matters. Who won the day in terms of how they made their clothes?
Well, hello to Dr. Drew. You know, I'm biased, prosecutor. Look, when it comes to style, this defense lawyer is very unorthodox. She's combing her hair and brushing her hair all over the place. She's acting up. She objected during the prosecutor's close, and that really, I thought, warranted a rebuke from the judge, and the jury heard that. And I think if it's just style points, then the prosecution will win this easily. But it is a high burden to overcome, as Misty correctly said, to show foreseeability. But as far as style points, I'm not a big fan of this defense lawyer. And by the way, doesn't she look like Pam from The Office? Just my 2 cents.
Worth about a penny at best, by the way. So to Dave Berg's point, why he's right, because you may be thinking at home, well, people object all the time. During a closing, it is seen as a form of argumentation, and counsel is given great latitude. All right, because it is the last aspect and it is going to be the most opinionated. So you usually do not see an objection, and that's why the judge tripped the standard and told her to be quiet. Now, Misty, that last idea, which is going to be our transition to Dr. Drew, which is parenting is hard, and now you're holding it to a standard we've never held it to before.
No, exactly. And that's why I think you saw the defense attorney who was talking a lot about herself. I agree. She's trying to say, put yourself in these shoes. This could be you. And trying to appeal to parents that are in that jury box, which we know they are. And I think that was the strategy behind that closing argument.
Now, Dr. Drew, you and I have discussed this many years ago. You won't remember. But I remember the idea, if the kid was a diabetic, the parent knows they're a diabetic, and the parent had reason to know that they hadn't given themselves the right amount of insulin, and the kid drives to school and kills 4 people because they go into toxic shock on the way home, you're not going to see the parent prosecuted. And here, now you are, because people are so angry about these things continuing to happen, and maybe the parents aren't raising him right, which makes illness behavior. What's your take?
That it's not that it's any kind of problem with parenting, is that parents in this country don't seem to understand the difference between a parenting issue and a mental health issue. So if a child is having suicidal ideation, hearing voices, if you find drugs of any type or paraphernalia, you have a mental health problem. By the way, if their sleep has changed, their nutrition has changed, their friends have changed, their grades have dropped, not parenting, mental health. You do not want those kinds of kids around firearms. That is a sign of serious depression. And we don't seem to understand that as a country. We want it to be a parenting problem or a teacher problem or a school problem. And it just is not. I think that when you and I talked about this years ago, we were talking about Adam Lanza, where that kid had profound mental illness, and yet that mom was sliding food under his door. She ended up killed by the child. He was so ill. He had boarded up his room and the windows in his room, hearing voices, actively hallucinating. And here's the new problem. Back then, I used to hold the parents accountable. Now, the laws are against us. If the child is over 18, you can't make them get care. They don't want it. They'll end up on the street. There aren't enough psychiatrists. There aren't enough psychiatric facilities. And who has the resources to access this care anymore? So we have multiple levels of serious problems on the mental health front with young people, and the lockdowns and COVID have put this all on steroids.
One question mark for you, Dr. Drew, and then I'll let you guys go. Appreciate this. Very fascinating. In Sandy Hook and here, too, you had parents who knew their kids were struggling, having some dark thoughts, and in both cases, they got them weapons as if it would be a healthy distraction from their other problems. Is that just a coincidence, or does it correlate for you, Doc, with a fundamental misapprehension that parents can have?
It's not so much to me that they thought it was a good idea, and maybe there was some correlation there, and people are thinking about these things to help solve problems in adolescence, which they are not, but that they didn't know that under no circumstances should that kid be around firearms. Under no circumstances. Like zero possibility of having them handling a firearm, let alone having one in the house. That's how people get killed.
I actually thought that was going to be more of an issue in this trial, and it's not because I'm anti-gun. I'm a gun owner. But I'm just saying, if your kid is presenting this way, it's an interesting choice. That's all. And we never got to talk to the Lanza mother about it because
the child ends up dead.
Right.
The child ends up dead more often than anybody else, and this is just it's not okay.
But to hear the parent explain it, and now to put it in a legal context, again, there is no other situation where you don't have the intent of the criminal, but you get looped in on it the way they're doing right now. So we'll see what happens. Dave Berg, thank you. Misty Marris, thank you. You really can go now. And Dr. Drew, always a pleasure, and thank you for helping us put this in the proper context. This case is a big deal for this society. Let's see how it goes.